We're so happy today to have with us George Franklin. George Franklin, a man who has had his kidney for close to 49 years in November. So we're going ahead and giving him credit for those 49 years. So we're going to welcome George Franklin, who will share his transplant journey with you.
Hello, everyone. My transplant journey, I guess, started when I was 18 years old, and I started hemodialysis in 1972 at the George Washington University Medical Center. I graduated from high school that year, and just 3 months later, I found myself, instead of being in the Navy, being on hemodialysis, or at least being in the hospital headed toward hemodialysis. That was an interesting time in my life, just being 18 years old. I had assumed a lot of things. I assumed I would be in the Navy and traveling the world and doing those types of things, but that's not the way it was supposed to be. I was on dialysis with three or four young ladies that were younger than myself. And we developed a very close, very strong relationship, being on dialysis 3 days a week from 8 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon. It was a difficult time, to say the least. In 1975, I was called for my first transplant. Unfortunately, the transplant never worked, and it was taken out a week or two later. I remained on hemodialysis, and November 4th of the same year, 1975, I was fortunate enough to get a second call just 6 months after the first. And that kidney, my surgeon actually had to get in my bed and tell me, do not turn this kidney down, because I was seriously thinking about not accepting it. I'd gone 6 whole months without any surgery after they removed the first kidney. And that was the longest period of time in the 3 years that I was on hemo that I did not have to go in for surgery for one thing or another. So November 4th, 1975, I got my transplant that I still have now. The surgery went into November 5th, started late that evening, late that night. And almost 49 years, it'll be 49 years in November, I have had what most would call a successful kidney transplant. The medals hanging around my neck. I am a big proponent of the transplant games, and the medals hanging around my neck I won this year at the National Transplant Games that were held in Birmingham, Alabama. Very happy about these medals, specifically because in 2022, when I went to the Transplant Games, they move around every even year. They were in San Diego, and the first event I had was a 50-meter backstroke, which I hadn't won a medal in a long time, but I didn't know that once I got out of the pool, I was going to collapse with heart failure. It literally just stopped. And 2 AEDs on the pool deck and resuscitation, another electric shock in the ambulance. And then the next day, I woke up with a pacemaker defibrillator in my chest. So those games, while successful in my mind because I lived to see them, they were difficult for me. I spent 2.5 weeks in a hospital in California, so I missed everything. But the games this year were very, very fruitful, I'd say. It was good to see a lot of people that I did not get to see in California. And so many people had prayed for me. It was amazing. It was a very heartfelt period of time in my life, just a couple of months ago, just last month, actually. This is still August. And so I am grateful for my still unknown deceased donor. Back in 1975, you could find out some things about your donor, but usually there wasn't much information shared with the recipient. I know that my kidney came from a white female that was killed in a car accident in Tennessee, or at least she was from Tennessee. I'm not quite sure where the accident was, but I am grateful to her, to her family, and any remaining children or siblings or grandchildren that she may have. I think about my donor constantly. And I guess that's my story. I've worked at different places in my life. My last full-time job was at NASA in DC at headquarters. I was a computer operator there. And I'm just grateful to be alive. I retired in 2002 or 3, I think, on disability. And I moved from the Washington, D.C. area where I'd lived all my life to the wonderful, peaceful, quiet city of Cumberland in Western Maryland. It's beautiful out here, mountains and fresh air.
George, could you tell us about the Quarter Century Club?
Yes, the Quarter Century Club was started by myself and someone that I did not know at the time. Met her online. Her name is Barbara Witt. She lives in Georgia on St. Simon's Island. And the Quarter Century Club was founded because we wanted to start a group of long-term recipients because we have our own particular problems. The problems or situations that a new recipient of any organ or tissue might go through, they wouldn't be the same as what we long-termers go through. We have, I think, about 220 members. We have a few living donors because their recipients are in the club. And I think our oldest living donor and recipient would be over 50 years. And the Quarter Century Club, I actually stepped down, as did my vice president, at the dinner dance that we host at the transplant games this year. It's been 20 years, and I felt it was time to step down and get some younger leadership in the club. This is Joey. I guess you can see him. Yeah. And I tell you, he came into my life at a very important time, I feel. I feel he was God sent, and I got him from a team member, Sierra, Albin, Sierra Albin, and they could no longer care for him, so they delivered him to me. And it was at a critical time. I'd gotten back from California. I was just back about a year, and I really need the exercise that he forces me to take in his every 3-hour walks.
George, could you tell us the difference, or how you feel, what may be the difference now in dialysis when you had it and dialysis now?
Well, Shirley, when I was on dialysis, I was 18 years old, just graduating from high school, and started dialysis, I think 3 months later, 4 months maybe. And there were, if memory serves me, there were 4 or 5 dialysis machines where I was at the GW, George Washington University Medical Center in Washington, D.C. I was 18. The young lady next to me was 16. The young lady next to her was 14. And I believe the young lady next to her was 12 years old. So we were all kids. We had 3 or 4 nurses in there with us at all times. It was an exciting time. I didn't realize that that was going to be for life. It was sometime later when someone said, well, this is it. This is the rest of your life unless you get a transplant. And I was stunned. But we had more of a family thing. We were, like I said, we were all kids. But when I went into the dialysis center here at our hospital, it was, for me, depressing because I didn't see that life. Everyone was bundled up in a blanket and watching their own TVs because each chair has its own television. And that's not the case when we were on dialysis. There was one black and white TV that was purchased, I think, by the Lions Club for the dialysis center. And the 5 of us never watched it much because the nurses all had their soaps on. And I got hooked on All My Children and Ryan's Hope from watching it 3 days a week on dialysis. I mean, it took me years to get off of those soaps. But for me, it was different. There was no laughter. There was no camaraderie or joking or anything when I went to the dialysis center the other day. Granted, we were small. It was just 5 beds. But in the beginning, that's all they had. There weren't that many machines in D.C. I know George Washington had 5. I want to say Children's may have had a couple, but we had children with me, kids with me, 16, 14, and 12.
And I also heard you mention that dialysis at that time was for 6 hours. Why was it so long? Was it the equipment?
Pretty much. Dialysis back in my day was 6 hours. We had to be there at 7, I believe. They trained us to help to set up our own machines, get our own needles, get all of our stuff that we needed, put up the saline bottles and all of that stuff. And I understand the importance of showing kids how to do that. But that's what we had to do. We started dialysis at 8 a.m. sharp, and we came off at 2 p.m. sharp. I'm pretty sure everyone else did too, but I had horrible cramps sometimes if the machine was run at a higher pressure. If I had too much fluid on me or something like that, they would have to run it at a higher pressure to get it off. Because back in the day, and I don't know what the specifications are now, but back in the day, we could only have 32 ounces of fluid a day. And any more than that, you would be in trouble come dialysis day because they had to run it at a higher pressure to pull that fluid off. And once it got into the muscle tissue, then that was a whole nother problem because it could be days to get the fluid out of your muscles, out of the tissue. So you really wanted it to stay in your blood, oddly enough. 8 hours was a requirement. Now, they have made advances in the, I will say, the filter. The machine has been compacted for sure. It's now the size of a small bookcase, maybe. But the advancements, I think, have been made in the coil that does the filtration. And so now most people can go for 4 or 4.5 hours, although they still have to go, most people, 3 times a week. Junior Collins, that I mentioned earlier, he goes once a week. He has kidney function, but not enough to sustain his life. So he has to go in once a week.
My question to you is this: back in 1975, when you were going through what you were going through, were there certain criteria you had to meet before becoming eligible for a kidney transplant?
I would say no, because in 1975, my transplant predated almost every OPO in the nation. They hadn't been created, I'll say. There was no UNOS, there were no OPOs, and there were only a few transplant centers in the nation. My hospital where I dialyzed, George Washington University Medical Center, happened to be one of them. There was an organization called COF, and if memory serves me, it stood for Southeastern Organ Procurement Foundation, SEOPF. And that was the only thing that was around at that time, at least on the East Coast, to my knowledge. When I was called in for my transplant, everyone was called in, because you really didn't know who was going to get it until you were told, okay, this kidney is going to George, or this kidney is going to Yolanda, or to Jerry, or whomever. So I'd say no. I was just 21 years old when I got the transplant. So many different things now versus 1974 and 5.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
So, George, thank you for telling your story. I'm glad that I was able to jump in today to hear your story. Amazing how many years you've had your kidney transplant. I actually know one of our board members, her husband, it will be 41 years this year of him having his kidney transplant. I will have to tell him about the club that you're in. So I'll get some if I can get some information about that, that will be wonderful. I'm sure he's going to be interested in that. My question to you is, because you have such an amazing story, do you attend throughout the years? Have you been able to attend some of the big conferences and everything with OPOs and different organizations to tell your story? Because I think it's important, especially for professionals, but also people who are waiting, etc., to know about your story.
I tell it wherever I'm invited. That's about. I mean, I'm a volunteer for the National Kidney Foundation. I have been a volunteer for American Kidney Fund, but that was a very, very long time ago. I am on a committee with the American Society of Transplantation. I actually spoke to a room full of doctors in Boston with that organization earlier this year. I am a volunteer for the American Heart Association.
Just interested in seeing you at some of the actual conferences and some of the workshops that are specifically held and hosted by some of the organizations specifically that focus in on communities, people of communities of color and professionals for communities of color. Was wondering if they, I'm sure that they know of you, but I think you would be a treasure to have at some of these huge workshops to talk about your journey and everything.
Well, they just have to invite me. Dealing with MOTEP, of course, I think you were on when Dr. Callender was speaking. That's how far back we go, because he was actually my doctor, when I had my transplant. He wasn't my surgeon, but he cared for me when my surgeon was away. I used to be very active with MOTEP when I lived in DC. Went to all the meetings. I knew some of the people that have passed on now. We all knew each other and kind of hung out. But that was it. Once I left the DC area, I guess MOTEP kind of slid away. I know I mentioned to Shirley the other day, I think, that Dr. Callender contacted me to ask if they could name an award after me. So, which they did. And for the life of me, I forget the name of it. I've got it around here on my desk or somewhere. But It is for long-term recipients. I would have loved to have presented it, but again, I wasn't asked.
You mentioned that you won medals at the transplant games. What did you win those medals for?
Good question. This one is a gold medal for volleyball. I did not get to play, but I was on the team, and the team came in first place. Actually, they were defending champions because they came in first place in California. Yay to Team Maryland. I should have on my Team Maryland hat. The other three here, I don't know if you can see them. I won with singles bowling, and then doubles bowling with my doubles partner, whose name is Raymond Twyman, and he goes by the nickname Boo. He and I won our gold medal, and then I bowled with Valerie Murray, and she and I won a gold medal for bowling as well. So again, Birmingham was so special because I didn't get to compete really in California, and to come home with the 4 gold medals, particularly the 3 that I earned bowling, was really, really special. And I was glad to help my bowling partners win the gold.
Hi, George. My name is Lily Bradley. I'm calling from Macon, Georgia. I have 2 questions to ask you.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you still on any meds for your kidney or heart?
I have a kidney transplant, and for, I'll say 44 years, maybe 45, I was on prednisone, 5 milligrams, and azathioprine / Imuran, 100 milligrams daily for the first 45 years. 4 years ago, my kidney function started dropping, and that caused me to have gout. And in order to put me on gout medication, my doctor had to take me off of the azathioprine, which is also known as Imuran, and put me on mycophenolate, which is also known as Celsep. Almost 5 years, I've been on the 5 milligrams of prednisone, as well as 1,000 milligrams daily of Celsep.
Also, I have another question. To get in your an organization, you have to be in your 40s to receive a transplant. You can't be in the 20s.
No. You're talking about the Quarter Century Club?
Yes.
Oh, you could get your transplant at birth. It's just that Quarter Century, our members have either had their single transplant for 25 years, or they may have had one for 10 and got another one for 15. And so cumulative, it's still 25 years. Mine goes to Athena Shry, who has a heart transplant and is one of our youngest members, because she got her heart transplant just a few months, I think, after birth. Mm-hmm. So sadly, someone lost their child, but they were gracious enough to donate that child's heart.
I'm 23 years out on my kidney. I just wonder, I would have to hopefully 25 to get in an organization, or it has to be a person who started out when they was very young to get in.
Well, 24 and a half, you contact us and we'll get you in, because we order our jerseys early in the even years. Like the next time a jersey order will go in will be early in 2026. So if you'd like to order a jersey, then let us know, depending on when your anniversary is, let us know early in 2026. that you're coming up for membership, and you'd like to order a jersey or not, but definitely reach out to us, early that year if you do want to get a jersey. And but no matter when a person is born, you just have to have your transplant for 25 years. And congratulations on 23 years.
Thank you.
George, if you were to give a one-word advice to an individual that is contemplating moving forward with a kidney transplant, what would that advice be? One word or
One
a
word?
statement? Or a statement.
Oh.
however you need to tell us. And hopefully when this goes forward, and I asked that question because I've run into numerous amounts of people and our family members of loved ones who are experiencing kidney difficulties. There are a lot of fears and phobias they have because either they don't understand the material that they've read, that they don't have enough information that's been communicated to them. Moving forward as a 49-year survivor of a kidney transplant, what would your advice be to those individuals and family members?
Those that are contemplating getting a transplant, I would say without question, get on the list. Do it as quickly as possible, because the list in most jurisdictions in the nation can be 4, 5, 6 years long. I would also say, if at all possible, it's best to get a living donor, because once that living donor has cleared all of the medical testing that they run you through, you'll get the best physical ever for free. Okay, because the recipient's insurance will pay for it, I believe. It's a surgery that it's a surgery, so there's some risk, of course, but it will save another person's life. And most mothers would do it in a heartbeat if it was their child or something, wouldn't even think twice about it. But I think we as a people really need to try to get living donors, because the waiting list for a deceased donor is just so terribly long, and it's been that way forever. And I suspect it's only going to get worse. And I say that because more and more people are having kidney disease and kidney issues that are leading to kidney disease. We don't eat right. We don't drink right. We don't exercise. We don't do the things that we have to do to keep our body healthy. And in my case, I had a disease of the kidney. I was 16 years old when they found out. I've always been on the thin side, so weight has not been an issue for me. But exercising and that type of thing, since the heart issue, has been an issue. I have lost weight trying to keep myself healthy. The weight loss has been unintentional, but I would, anybody that's considering it, do it. Just do it. Now, everybody's not going to get 49 or 50 years or 20 years, but that 5-year or 10-year or 15 or 20-year period that you're not on dialysis, you can actually live and travel and enjoy your life, go back to work, enjoy your grandkids or your children. So by all means, I am definitely a proponent for organ and tissue transplantation.
I'm going to thank each one of you that came today. We appreciate you coming, and do enjoy the rest of your day.